Let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling one of the absolute highest stakes situations in the entire caregiving space, and that is letting someone go. Look, whether it's terminating a caregiver who just isn't meeting your standards, or having to discharge a client because the relationship has become totally unworkable, we all know these moments are emotional minefields. And here's a pretty sober and grounded reality for you. The average wrongful termination lawsuit, it can cost an agency well over 6 figures. So as a leader, you aren't just making a tough call here. You're literally placing your entire organization under a microscope. Let's dive into exactly how to handle these procedures defensively so you can build a rock-solid defense.
Here's the harsh reality we all just have to face. Firing someone without undeniable proof instantly turns into a super costly dispute. You can't just sit across a desk from someone and say, hey, this just isn't working out. A handshake or some vague verbal understanding simply will not stop a formal administrative action against your agency. If you don't have a literal mountain of evidence backing you up, you are leaving the door wide open for pushback. A simple, everyday disagreement can and will quickly escalate into claims of unfair treatment.
So, I really want you to ask yourself this. When a seemingly calm termination rapidly turns into a 5-alarm fire, what exactly is protecting your agency? When those angry emails start flying or an outside investigator suddenly comes knocking on your door, you absolutely cannot rely on your memory. You can't just say, well, they were a bad employee, or hey, we definitely talked about this. That doesn't hold up. No way. You need something tangible, something objective, and undeniably real to step in and absorb that impact.
Enter what we call the documentation shield. Now, it's not just annoying paperwork or some bureaucratic red tape. It is a real-world defense mechanism. But here's the catch with that. A shield isn't something you can just magically summon out of thin air the second you're attacked. It has to be deliberately forged, piece by piece, well before you ever step foot into that final termination meeting. This meticulously gathered proof, that is the metal that makes up your shield.
Okay, moving right along into part 1, forging your defense and the essential must-haves.
Building this shield is a sequential progression. You don't just jump straight to the end. You start at step 1, which is recording the very first incidents. Then, as those issues persist, you move smoothly to step 2, issuing formal warnings. And only then do you actually reach step 3, finalizing the termination. Building this shield takes time, It starts the exact moment you notice a crack in performance, which proves later on that your agency didn't act rationally or maliciously.
Let's look at step 1, dates and descriptions. Saying something vague like, caregiver John was late a lot is completely useless in a dispute. But saying, John arrived 45 minutes late on Tuesday, October 12th, and missed his shift entirely on Thursday, October 14th without calling, now that is bulletproof. You need precise dates, exact times, and incredibly detailed, objective descriptions. Take all the emotion out of it. Just state the undeniable facts of what happened, when it happened, and what the immediate impact was.
So, step 2 is taking those facts and formalizing them into warnings or corrective action forms. Because when an employee like John inevitably gets defensive and says, "What? I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. Nobody told me." Having a signed corrective action form completely neutralizes that argument on the spot. It proves in black and white that John was actually given a fair, transparent, and clearly communicated chance to improve his performance.
Next up, and this is absolutely crucial, you must explicitly connect that behavior back to your standard operating procedures. If John violates a client confidentiality rule, don't just call him careless. Cite the exact page and paragraph of your employee handbook that he actually violated. Doing this grounds the whole termination in established pre-existing agency rules. It effectively removes all the personal bias from the equation. It's no longer a manager saying, "I don't like how you work." It's the agency enforcing Policy 4.2.
Look, verbal, he said, she said memories are flawed, they're biased, and quite frankly, they are utterly useless in a dispute. If it isn't written down, as far as a mediator or an investigator is concerned, it simply did not happen. So what's the antidote to that extreme vulnerability? A digital paper trail. Every single time you have a coaching conversation with a caregiver, follow it up with a quick email summarizing exactly what was discussed. Those little notes, they're your absolute savior.
All right, that brings us to part 2 of this explainer, sealing the procedure and looking at the final steps.
These 2 steps are what officially close any lingering loopholes. First, the final paycheck. Failing to deliver this accurately and on time can trigger some massive fines and turn an otherwise clean termination into a total legal nightmare. Second, the termination confirmation. This written document explicitly states that the employment has ended, it notes the effective date, and it references all your prior documentation.
It leaves absolutely zero room for misinterpretation.
And finally, Part 3, Total Agency Protection, the bottom line.
I really want you to keep this core coaching insight front of mind every single day. Proper documentation shows that you followed procedure, acted fairly, and protected your agency. Those right there are your 3 pillars of a successful termination. Procedure shows you aren't chaotic. Fairness shows you aren't malicious, meaning, you gave them a legitimate chance to fix the issue. Hit those 2, and absolute protection is pretty much guaranteed.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final, pretty powerful challenge to wrap up. Is your agency's shield actually ready for your next termination? Like, if you had to let someone go this very afternoon, do you have the dates, the emails, and the signed warnings all ready to go? If your answer is no, or even just, I'm not really sure, then you need to immediately audit your practices. Start forging that shield today, before the fire even starts. Thanks so much for joining me.